Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show. This is probably one of the most important shows that we've done in several months. So if you tune in and tune out of different shows and you catch one here and there, this is one that you need to watch. It's going to be a longer show, and trust me, it's going to build and build and build, and you need to watch it through its entirety. Marxism, cultural hegemony, critical theory, intersectionality, which bleeds into the term intersections of oppression. This is a show, today's show, where I believe that you will need a piece of paper and a pencil to take notes, write definitions, mark scriptures, etc. If you do not understand these terms and how they operate, the future in regards to the changes for the worse taking place in America and around the world, the future will be wildly confusing for you. Now, you see, many of you know the why, but not the how. You know biblically why these changes are happening, because we're in the last days, and the love of many is waxing cold. But many do not know the answer to how these things are happening, without simplifying it and just saying simply that the enemy of our souls is at work, which is true. If we can answer in part today that question, how is this happening? How are these things being implemented and through what means? It will remove the scales from your eyes, wake you up, and in return, you will be able to wake those up around you, Lord willing. Proverbs 24:5-6 says this: "A wise man is full of strength, and a man of knowledge enhances his might. For by wise guidance you can wage your war, and in abundance of counselors there is victory." Proverbs 11:9 says, "With his mouth the godless man destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge the righteous will be delivered." Proverbs 2:10, "For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul." James 1:5, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him." As we look to the Lord for truth today, I pray he would guide us in clarity, not confusion. He doesn't guide in confusion. He guides in clarity. You know the why it's happening. I am going to be explaining the how it's happening. You see, many talking about clarity and confusion, and I've discussed some of these articles on my show, and just to kind of preface the subject with this, many of you are confused whenever you see articles like these. Smithsonian Institution explains that rationality and hard work are racist. Like people tweeting out the wazoo things like this. Using big words is another form of white supremacy. Blacks who live in urban areas don't have the same access to education as whites. This makes them less smart. I do not agree that a race is more or less smart. This is just awful to even say. If you feel the need to communicate like you are a thesaurus, you are probably a white supremacist. Many of you are confused whenever you see articles that discuss like this. A new study that suggests that pregnant Black women are at highest risk for adverse birth outcomes due to climate change. Another example, white supremacist ideas have historical roots in U.S. Christianity. They're coming for the church, people. Christianity in America is racist, they say. Rolling Stone writer says the word pro-life is used in service of racism and should be retired like Redskins. The racist effects of schools reopening during the pandemic by a teacher. Opening schools in that phase was racist, some teachers would say. These are confusing, and many of you look at these verses and just say, the world's getting crazy. But you don't know the backstory of why this is taking place and how it's being implemented. I know that the overwhelming majority of those watching this program, I mean, it literally has to be close to 100%, do not believe that hard work is racist. You don't believe that big words are an indicator of white supremacy. Just because you think that some of the science behind climate change may be falsified doesn't make you a hater of African American women who are pregnant. It's just absurd to even think these things. You don't believe that the very roots of Christianity in America is linked to white supremacy. So how is this all being implemented in America today? That is what we'll be discussing on today's program. Andrew, thanks for joining me today.
It's good to be here.
Listen, the reason I, on this show, a Christian show, am talking about socialism, Marxism, communism, is because, let me tell you, they're anti-God. Therefore, Christians who stand upon the Word of God cannot stand for these. Christians who stand upon the Word of God should stand against these ideas. Socialism, Marxism, communism, they're based off of a materialistic worldview. They punish virtue. They endorse stealing. They encourage envy and class warfare. They seek to destroy marriage and family. This is why men and women of God must be speaking against these things. You see, socialism seeks for the state to replace the family. That way it can indoctrinate children in its leftist way of thinking and remove them from any notions of God and religion. Actually, it was Frederick Engels, the co-author with Marx, Karl Marx, of the Communist Manifesto, that once wrote that the society he envisioned would be one where the single family ceases to be the economic unit of society. Private housekeeping is transformed into a social industry. The care and education of the children becomes a public affair.
And that's why we're in the mess that we're in right now. I mean, because of feminism, because of socialism, the traditional roles of the family have been destroyed. Children are no longer raised at home. Today they're raised in the school system. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're becoming so radical.
That's right. That's right. I'm reminded of a quote from Vodi Bakum that says, I don't have it on, it said something as if, do not expect, for the Christians, do not expect to win the culture war while the government raises your children in public schools.
That's right.
That's a powerful statement. You see, talking about Marxism, we're going to get into it a lot, and it's going to grow. The show is going to grow in depth as we continue. To grow, we have to first define some definitions, and Marxism is all about class warfare. And we're going to get into it more in a minute, but it's about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. The proletariat, the working man, the oppressed, and the bourgeoisie, those who are in control of the cultural hegemony that rule over the people through religion and capitalism. Yeah. Okay, they're dividing it now. You see, a tactic of the left is regression to tribalism.
Yep.
You are no longer defined by ideas, your character. You are defined by what tribe you belong to. It is literally the opposite of the famous Martin Luther King speech. He said this, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. No longer you are no longer defined by ideas. You're no longer defined by your character.
Yeah.
It stands in stark contrast with the most famous quote from Martin Luther King Jr.
Your highest identity, and we'll get to this, but your highest identity that you can possibly hope to achieve is either as an oppressor or as someone who's being oppressed.
That's right. And tribalism is the opposite of that. There are tribes that are demonized today, tribes that are being silenced, so to speak, tribes that are not just defined by region or skin color, but those are the first parts. What is your region? What is your skin color? There's a list. I have a list of about 7 we're going to go into. of the tribes that you either belong to or don't belong to according to the left. There's just so much confusion. You know that, if you are white, you're not supposed to talk about police brutality. And you can't be proud. If you are of a Caucasian descent in America, you are not able to be proud of your accomplishments. And the show right now is probably like making people feel awkward, like, wow, I can't believe they're saying these things. They're going to say this is white supremacy. If you are proud that let's say you were a doctor, you cannot be proud in America today of your accomplishments because
That's right.
you are white. And this is all Marxism. And the things that I'm saying right now are not politically correct. And that political correctness is under the umbrella of how Marxism is implemented. Mm-hmm. It actually was birthed from the Frankfurt School of Thought. Did you know that?
No.
That's where political correctness, in the 1800s, that's where it was actually it birthed from. And it's an arm of how Marxism is spread. If you are an American, you can't love your country. If you're a man, you're of the wrong tribe. So you don't even have a voice in things like abortion. This is all cultural Marxism. What is Marxism? Put it on the screen. Marxism, the political and economic theories of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, later developed by their followers to form the basis for the theory and practice of communism. So Karl Marx is the father of communism. There are several different and differing ideologies amongst communists. But when one says, I am a Marxist, they are subscribing to the Marxist form of communism. And it's all about class warfare, the working class proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. Now the goal, this is another point that if you're taking notes, the goal for Marxists in America, the main goals, the list is long, and there's different short-term goals to achieve these long-term goals. The goal for Marxists in America is to get us to an atheistic, post-capitalist society. And that will only be possible. Let's start getting into what is totally not politically correct. That will only be possible by destroying this term. You need to write it down. This is so important that you know these terms, that you can define these terms, that you can make sense of why and how this is happening. The Marxists will be successful if they destroy what they refer to as the cultural hegemony. Now, this is once again another long definition. Put it on the screen. Even pause the show if you have to write these things down. Cultural hegemony. Cultural hegemony refers to domination or rule maintained through ideological or cultural means. It is usually achieved through social institutions which allow those in power to strongly influence the values, norms, ideas, expectations, worldview, and behavior of the rest of society. In the liberal mind, you are the enemy if you are a part of the cultural hegemony.
That's right.
You are the enemy, once again, if you are a part of the cultural hegemony. The example of the cultural hegemony in America is this. Then this is going to make sense of the articles I read in the beginning and everything that I read from this point beyond. Let me take a quick drink from my coffee cup. The example of cultural hegemony in America. This is really important. Put it on the screen. And the list could be longer than this, but this is what identifies them most strongly. The enemy. If you are white, male, American, cisgender, meaning you identify as either male or female, straight, able-bodied, Christian. And everybody who is not that is a minority according to them. And everyone who is not that, as Vodi Bakum says, this line is from Vodi Bakum, and everyone who is not that is a victim of the cultural hegemony established by those individuals. which means everybody who is not that is at war with that. And everybody who is that, white male, American, cisgender, straight, able-bodied Christian, is privileged. And the more of those boxes you tick off, the more privileged you are. Okay, this is the filter that is taught, like all the information that is taught in our colleges, in our in our universities, the filter of information through all of our media outlets is filtered through this very thing. And this ideology is infiltrating the evangelical church.
That's right.
And I'm an evangelical, and I'm mad about it. White. So, for example, if you are not white and you're anything other than white, you exploit it. If you're not male, exploit it. If you're not American, the left exploits it. Cisgendered, straight, able-bodied Christian exploits it. Here's another definition. Remember, we're building. We're building. Another definition is critical theory. The primary way to understand society is through group oppression and victimhood. Yeah. And hopefully that was on the screen. That is the most simplest way I can define critical theory. The primary way to understand society is through group oppression and victimhood.
I actually saw his name is Will Witt. He does work with Prager University, and he was in college. He used to be a liberal, and the turning point for him was he was sitting in a class, and there was an African-American girl sitting next to him, and his teacher pointed to him and said, "By your very whiteness, you are oppressing the person sitting next to you." That is what critical theory is. You, whether it's in your mind, whether it's your intention or not, you are actively oppressing people that are in these minority groups.
Yes, exactly. We're going to be showing some videos that are probably going to shock you in today's program. Intersectionality, let's define it. Intersectionality, put it on the screen. In a society with various social groups, there is a complex web of oppression, victim relationships. Intersectionality is the intersection of your privilege or the intersection of your oppression. These ideologies are being forced upon minds in colleges, universities, like I said, as well as the evangelical church.
Yeah.
The goal of critical theory and intersectionality is not merely to deceive and distort, but to divide. So once again, let's put it up on the screen. This is, and then we're going to show you examples to solidify what we're saying. List of oppressing factors: white, male, American, cisgender, straight, able-bodied, Christian. So if, for example, that first one on the screen, white, if you are not white and you are anything else, that is an intersection of your oppression. If you are not male but female, they say that is another layer. So now you have two layers of oppression. So now your oppression intersects at two different places. If you're not an American, you have three levels of oppression, and so on and so forth. The level of oppression and kind of oppression layers itself, combines itself in these intersections. This is cultural Marxism. And so, for example, I am white, I am male, I'm American, I'm cisgendered, I'm straight. And now 6 is very interesting, able-bodied. Because I am a big dude, I am considered oppressed because I am not thin and in shape. So I actually have, according to the left, one intersection of oppression.
Congrats, man.
Yeah.
You made it on the list.
I'm on the list. And I'm a Christian. So of the 7 points, I have one level of oppression. So that, therefore, that is credentials unto me that I now have a voice to tell you what you can and cannot think about health. Because of my intersection of oppression, I can now speak to the most fittest people, to the fittest people in the world, and the ones that are absolutely morbidly obese. because I now have credentials that I am not able-bodied. Right? Now, I am able-bodied. I play tennis. I play golf. And I'm actually on a diet, mind you. I've actually, kudos to myself. I've lost almost 25 pounds in 6 weeks. So,
That's good.
But because I am overweight, that is my intersection of oppression. So let me continue on this road by showing you a few different videos, okay? Watch this first video. And we're going to come back and discuss it. This is a cultural Marxist. Go ahead and play the video.
All white people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. So even when you're on your path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human, like that actually, instead of people of color and black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, all racist. So I just want y'all to know that up front.
Okay, coming back to me, I know that was a crazy video. I understand that. And I'm not so much going to discuss the things that she said. We know that they're wrong. But the reason that she was able to say those things so freely is because she has so many intersections of oppression. Those are her credentials. So let me tell you about her according to her, okay? This is her resume, so to speak, of what qualifies her to speak before people. Once again, this is her bio. I'm not calling her fat, okay? But this is like she says it in her bio.
Right.
She is a fat, black, cultural producer, multidisciplinary artist, non-binary shapeshifter, hood feminist, and data futurist. So you've got to understand what qualifies her to speak in this culturally Marxist world is her intersections of oppression, her credentials. So she can check off 5 boxes. Let's put this up on the screen. Remember, white, male, American, cisgender, straight, able-bodied, Christian. So let's start off with first. White. She's not white. Level of oppression. She is not able-bodied. Level of oppression. She is not straight. Level of oppression. She's not cisgendered. She's not cisgendered, level of oppression. And she's not male. Level of oppression.
Yeah.
So she's 5 layers deep. And there's a demonic thing there too, saying that she's a shapeshifter. I mean,
that's weird.
Demonic.
And there's
I also think it's interesting that if she's a shapeshifter, that means she can choose any shape she wants to be.
That's the shape that she's chosen, yeah.
Okay,
but what's also interesting here is that she said, if you're white, you're racist, and there's nothing you can do about that. You'll always be racist. So what do you do about it? If this is a problem, if it's a problem to be white, if it's a problem to be cisgendered, Christian, everything else on this list, what can you do about it? The only solution, the reason why you are bad is because you have power. The only solution is to flip the power dynamic and equally distribute power. So this is Marxist because it's using Marxist principles, but it's also Marxist because the only solution in this scenario to right all of the wrongs is socialism.
That's good, Bellers. That's a good point. Listen to what that was good. I'm going to show you another video. Let's just keep going. This is a chapter leader for Black Lives Matter. Her name is Lilith Sinclair. Now, remember, we've played videos before that there's 3 people that co-founded the Black Lives Matter movement. And Patrisse Cullors and Opal Tometi. Patrisse Cullors is on an interview. I mean, just blatantly saying, oh, and as you know, we are trained Marxists. Okay, so there's no getting around that at the origin of Black Lives Matter, the origin is Marxist. Now we love, once again, all races in America. But the thing is this, is that the Black Lives Matter organization does not represent Black Lives Mattering, so to speak. It's in the same way, they're, like I said, Democrats are word name geniuses, okay? We were able to deem Antifa as a terrorist organization because Antifa is such a weird word. It's like, what is Antifa? Now, we don't understand it means anti-fascist, right? But it's like, you know, but you're not going to condemn or label a group that's called Black Lives Matter. You see, in reality, it's not about Black Lives Matter because they do matter. But the organization itself, if it really was titled what it was, it would be called Marxist for America.
That's right.
And if Black Lives Matter was called Marxist for America, it'd be a lot easier for people to get behind and condemn and even label it a terrorist organization because that's what they are. But the Democrats left our they're geniuses whenever it comes to naming the organizations. You know, this is just funny, you know, but just imagine that there was an organization, a communist organization that was just a horrific organization, communist, pedophiles, you know, revelers, drunkards, they're all in one horrible organization. And they named their organization the good guys that fight the bad guys. It's going to be really hard to condemn a group. What do you mean you're condemning us? What do you mean we're a terrorist organization? We're called the good guys who fight the bad guys. You're crazy. That's what we're dealing with. Okay, right. Let's continue. This is a Black Lives Matter chapter leader. Her name is Lilith Sinclair. You've got to pay attention to her credentials that she gives. So go ahead and play the video.
Hi everyone. As many of you know, my name is Lilith Sinclair. I'm an Afro-Indigenous, non-binary local organizer here in Portland, organizing for the abolition of not just the militarized police state, but also the United States as we know it. I want to make sure that while we are standing here on stolen land, we make sure to do a land acknowledgement.
Okay, here we go. So she says, hi everyone. As many of you know, so she must be popular there, my name is Lilith Sinclair. I am an Afro-Indigenous, non-binary local organizer here in Portland, organizing for the abolition, not just of the militarized police state, but for the United States as we know it. I want to make sure that while we are here on stolen land, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, put the list up. What qualifies her to speak before her congregation? Because remember, liberalism is a religion.
Right.
So like if I was to speak before a church and someone was to give my resume, they would say, well, Zach Drew, you know, was born and raised in Mount Zion, Illinois, and he went and studied media under Jim Baker and was his co-host for 7 years and a co-host for True News and traveled this and that, and then he started his own program. That was what would be, what's the word I'm looking for? What would you know, qualify me to speak before.
That's right. It would give way to what you're saying, yeah.
Give way to what I'm saying. But in the Marxist world, it's not about any of those things. It's, I am an Afro-Indigenous, I'm non-binary, I'm not cisgendered, and I'm anti-God. And so, woohoo, cheers, cheers. This is what qualifies her to speak before her congregation, the religion of liberalism. Okay, so put the list up. White, male, American, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied, Christian. So she's letting you know that her oppression runs 5 levels deep. She's not male, she's not white, she's not cisgendered, she's not straight, and she's not Christian. Okay, just go on, you know, we're just gonna keep going really quickly. Here's just an article, we're not even gonna get into the article, just the headline. This is cultural Marxism played out. Biden picked to head the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. And this lady, who he picked to head it up, wrote that blacks have, quote, superior physical and mental abilities. Okay. Now, that it doesn't, if people say those things, it's just like, you know, it's just cultural Marxism. I just understand it for what it is. You're going to be able to filter everything you see through cultural Marxism from this point forward, I really hope. Because it's, once again, you cannot say things like that if you're a part of the group of 7, right? I would never, and I don't even believe it, but what if there was a white person that said whites had superior physical and mental abilities? people's jaws would drop.
Well,
Condemning them. I would condemn them.
cancel culture would come for them, and they would lose their job and their career would be ruined.
And rightfully so. You can't have thoughts like that hold public office.
But you can if you don't belong to one of those 7
That's right.
identifiers of cultural hegemony. Here's one example, and another example is Nick Cannon. He said basically the exact same thing that this woman said, and still has a job. You can have a job and say awful, horrible, racist things if you don't belong to that list.
That's right. And the pillars of our society are going to have to be run by people that are not a part of that list of 7, because in the mind of the cultural Marxists, those are the enemies, those are the bourgeoisie, and the working class oppressed people must take them over because they're all bad and horrible. And then, which is just so ironic, is that if that happens, then it literally is the exact same scenario once again, but flipped. Mm-hmm. Then the bourgeoisie is not those 7, and the proletariat is those 7, and it just goes back and forth. It's to destroy countries. Mm-hmm. It's to divide and conquer so that a select few people can have all the power, all the control, and all the money. It's the pride of life. It's the sin of man, and these ideologies and philosophies, because they are both, have infiltrated the church, and they are in stark contrast to the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, something that's strange is that, and I've always thought it was strange, but it makes so much sense. One of those on the list is American. If you live in America, you're American. If I'm a citizen of this country, I'm an American. They're basically saying America has to fall. Mm-hmm. It's wrong that America is the largest superpower in the world. That's what this list says.
Yeah, you're right. And they're going to people are going to hold big offices in America, not necessarily because they're qualified in the real sense of being qualified, but they're going to be qualified in the sense of their intersections of oppression. That is what's going to get them to the top. Here, let's read an article here. Here's another example of cultural Marxism and holding big offices. Biden picks transgender doctor Rachel Levine as assistant health secretary. So you probably saw it in the news. So the article just simply says President-elect Joe Biden has tapped Pennsylvania Health Secretary Rachel Levine to be his assistant secretary of health, leaving her poised to become the first openly transgender federal official to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. So just understand that this transgender person who was born a man, okay, so this is who will head up public policy in several areas, and most notably abortion, okay? I mean, just our new National Health Secretary, the Health Secretary of the most powerful country in the world, Health Secretary, denies basic biology. The United States National Health Secretary, health, is living a lie. Transgender, they've even mutilated themselves. But their credentials are his intersections of oppression. And I need to make this clear. This breaks my heart to see people rebel so hard against God. I actually, whenever I read that story, I had sympathy. I just thought, it's the saving grace of Jesus Christ. That man, if he accepts Jesus Christ and repents of his sin, I mean, we are all wretched sinners, deserving of hell. That man that you're seeing there, we judge it, that's just wicked, it's rebellion, and it is. But if God ever got through to him, just understand that he'll be in heaven with you forever. And he was a child and a creation of God. And, Jesus, he wipes away all of our sin, makes us clean and white as snow if we confess our sin and repent before him and turn from our ways, which means to repent. So, but what that is, it's rebelling against God. And the world is changing so swiftly. Even just 20 years ago, unbelievers, they wouldn't have been okay with this. I mean, that's where we are. And it's because of cultural Marxism invading our land. This is the new normal. As the left says, now that orange man bad has been defeated, we can go back with our regular lives. Welcome to your life. This is a new normal. This wasn't a normal election, people. This was an election that would either give us 4 more years of a reprieve that, in my opinion, it's an opinion, okay, people, that most conservatives in the church squandered. There were great things that were done under President Trump, but everybody was saying in the beginning that the reprieve was to, make sure you're prepared for what's to come and to share the gospel like crazy because the hammer's coming down. And most people just literally lived their lives totally normal. So this election was either going to give us 4 more years of a reprieve or an election that would begin America's final descent. And talking about this, the transgender National Health Secretary, many on the left would like to do these same acts to children, even without parental consent. Let's just go through headline, okay? California Teachers Union wants kids to pursue gender transition without parental consent. Even in California, you have to be 18 to get a tattoo, 16 to drive a car, 21 to buy a gun, alcohol, or pot. But if you want to change your gender, well, then you have to simply be 12. And your public school will be more than happy to help. Need an abortion? Tell your teacher. Want to refill your birth control? Go to the school clinic. Thinking about starting hormone treatments? Your parents will never find out. At least not under the policy that California Teachers Association is pushing. So this is what's coming. This is what's coming. These are articles from this year, but this is what's coming. Washington State erases parents from the equation. Since January, children in Washington State's age 13 and up can obtain confidential treatment for mental health conditions and gender dysphoria using their parents' insurance plan without their parents' consent. Now, the state is considering a bill to set up health clinics on middle and high school campuses. Parents fear these clinics will talk children into dangerous and irreversible medical treatments such as puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to make their bodies look more like the opposite sex. Here's another one, Epic Times. Minors may get sex changes without parental consent if California's Teachers Union has anything to say about it. The California Teachers Association's recent position statement suggests that students should be able to receive hormone treatment to change their sex without parental consent. Although this CTA belief does not directly change regulations on the matter, it indicates the kind of legislation the powerful union will support. It's coming, people. It's coming. And it's a sign of cultural Marxism. Romans chapter 1. Verses 18 through 22. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Understand, that is why the unbelieving reprobate mind revels. They love unrighteousness. Because look at that spiritual principle there. Unrighteousness suppresses the truth, the scriptures say. I'm going to read it again. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and righteousness of man, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. They're suppressing the truth, Jesus. They're suppressing these things. And what suppresses truth in a country, in a life, is unrighteousness. So the more unrighteousness can prevail throughout a country, the more truth will be suppressed. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. It's saying that even the unbeliever has no excuse, is what these scriptures are saying. For his invisible attributes, God's invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, and the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. Down the rabbit hole we go. Where we end, nobody knows. Except the Bible does.
That's right.
You know, if we got into a time machine and traveled to the future in which the left's ultimate goals were achieved, there would not be a sovereign American government. There may not even be an America anymore. And if there was, I assure you, it would literally be America in name only. There would be a world governing body that controls your every action for the good of all humanity, because nationalism, remember, loving your country is bad. Loving your country is just absolutely selfish, that they say. In this future world, you are no longer an American citizen. You'll be a global citizen living in probably one of 10 provinces that is controlled by a world government. Okay, this is Daniel chapter 7, verses 24 through 26. It's also described in Revelation 13, verses 1 through 10. Matthew 24, 11 through 13. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray, and because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, that's you, the body of Christ, the faithful. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. John 8:12, I'll end with this scripture. Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I know it's controversial, and I just felt like I really had to speak these things. And so yeah, share it with your friends. I hope you took notes. Share the video, share your notes. We'll see you next week.